Welcome to Buddha at the Gas Pump. My name is Rick Archer, and my guest today is Jeff Foster. And hi Jeff. I had the pleasure of meeting Jeff at the Science and Non-Duality conference just a week ago out in California. We had lunch together in a little Thai restaurant, which was delicious. And I've been meaning to interview Jeff for a long time, but he's always had trouble with his bandwidth over in the UK. But now he happens to be in the US, so we've worked it out. And speaking of the Science of Non-Duality conference, I just want to make a brief mention of thanks to all the people who donated to my being able to go there. There's a donate button on my site, and it was on the basis of that I was able to attend the conference. And I really had a great time. If I get a chance, I'll make a little video or write something up about the whole experience of the conference. But I just wanted to say thanks to those people who have donated. And also perhaps to mention that the Bat Gap coffers have been somewhat depleted as a result of that conference. And so if anyone feels like donating or donating again or something, it's much appreciated. But of course, there's no obligation. So, Jeff. Jeff is we'll let him introduce himself in the course of the interview, but Jeff is, I guess, what we would call a non-duality teacher. No, he doesn't like that. We'll have to refine it. In fact, on the little, I saw some little blurb, maybe it was at the Science and Non-Duality conference, a description of you, and it used the word radical, and I thought, why is that there? Because I wouldn't think of Jeff as radical. Why are they using that word?
It's a very good question, Rick. I guess. Well, I suppose the first thing to say is we love to classify teachings and teachers, don't we? And I mean, I guess perhaps the way I used to talk, a few years ago, you might call that it was a little bit more radical, I suppose. I've never seen myself as I've never really had much of a label for what I am. I mean, I just talk about life, and people listen or they don't listen, and that's it, really. I mean, people try to classify me and categorize me, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of happy with being called anything. I mean, depending on someone's background, I mean, that's going to influence what they call you. So someone with a non-duality background might call you a non-duality teacher if they resonate with what you say. If someone hasn't got that background, they might call you a friend, or they might call you I don't know. I mean, what do people call me? I don't know what people call. I don't know. I don't know what I am. What am I, Rick? You tell me.
Well, we'll work on that.
We'll work it out in the interview, I think.
I was teaching a TM residence course one time, and I kind of walked in late, and I was just coming from another city, and the other teachers were already there, and I got up and just started talking. And at one point somebody said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "I'm still working on that one." Got a good laugh. So I wouldn't call you radical, because in my listening to what you have been saying, I consider you to be quite appreciative of the whole package. You don't seem to be taking a radical stance at one end of the spectrum and sort of dismissing or denying the validity of the other parts of the spectrum. You're just kind of like looking at the whole package, as far as I can tell.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I mean, you've frozen, Rick. I'm not sure is that you've frozen on my screen. I don't know if you've frozen, Rick. Have I frozen?
No, you're fine. I have to. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, we can get into all of this, but in the end, this message, it's not a rejection of any aspect of life, because I mean, in the end, what we're talking about is non-duality. I mean, which means not two, which means wholeness, oneness, and then so it all becomes a bit strange when you start to say oneness is this, but it's not that. When you start to reject aspects of life, I mean, then you're kind of back into the old religious stuff, really. You're back into I'm right, you're wrong, and my path is the true path, and I have the truth and you don't, and that's never been what this is about for me. It's never been about I know and you don't. This is about the mystery. This is about the not knowing. This is about the falling away of all those rigid conceptual positions. But I mean, that's what I've discovered over the years, is that, I mean, even non-duality can just become another religion for people. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, you know. Mm-hmm. And this is, I guess, when we go into the story of my life.
Yeah, we'll get into all that.
We'll get into that. I mean, I was really stuck in that kind of fundamentalist, rigid fundamentalist place of, oh, I mean, like I have no self, but you still have a self, or I'm non-dualistic, but you're still dualistic. And there's no me, there's no me here, but you still have a me. You know, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
funny thing, at the time you don't see it. That's what's interesting. At the time you don't realize that you're stuck in it. You just think you're free. You think you have the truth. But the beauty of life is that it's not going to let, in my experience, it doesn't let you get away with anything. Life is not going to let you come to rest on any conceptual position. Life is going to come along and it's going to burn up any conceptual, even the conceptual position that you have no conceptual position. You know? I mean, it's brilliant, this thing.
Yeah. Well, thank God for that. You know, who wants to get stuck?
Who wants to get, well, stuckness is suffering. I mean, really, that's what this message has always been about for me. Is it's about the stuckness and about seeing the stuckness, and somehow in that seeing the stuckness, freeing yourself from the stuckness. And you can get stuck in anything. You can even get stuck in this non-duality stuff. I mean, really, you can probably get more stuck than ever in this non-duality stuff. So,
Yeah.
It's really fascinating, the whole thing.
I've encountered a few of those. In Sanskrit, probably the best word for non-duality is Brahman, and the word Brahman it comes from a root that means great. And there's a saying, Brahman is the eater of everything. And the idea is that Brahman is thought to be completely inclusive of everything, of the absolute, of the relative, of you know, it's kind of more than the sum of its parts. And so I think very often a rather preliminary stage of realization, which is not inclusive of everything, is thought of as non-duality, and it has its own intrinsic non-dualness. But if it separates itself, as you were just saying, from all kinds of other things, like the whole relative world, then obviously it's not. There's a duality. There's not a non-duality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you want to get into this now, because in the end, this is the real meat of it, you know.
Well, we can get with the meat.
We get with the meat. Let's go straight to the meat.
Then we can always retrace our steps.
If there are any steps left after that.
Go back for the potatoes later.
Right. Well, this is why these days I use the metaphor of the waves in the ocean quite a lot, because I think a lot of people seem to resonate with this, and it seems to clear up a lot of this stuff, you know. So you could say that the ocean is we've pointed to is what's been called the absolute, you know. But the waves are the relative, and the thing is that, I mean, this is why it's such a beautiful metaphor, because it's not even a metaphor. I mean, you literally you go to the ocean, you know, go and walk to the ocean and look out, and it will look like, that's what it will look like. It will look like there are waves moving through the ocean. I mean, you can't deny the appearance of that. But the thing is, you get in a boat and you sail to the wave. You sail to the waves, and you go right up close to those waves, and you will not find any separation between the ocean and the wave. You just can't say where the ocean ends and the wave begins. You won't find the line. So when you look right up close, well, where's the wave? You know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't deny that there appears to be a wave, like from a distance. You know, you can't deny that either. Because you know, this whole relative denial thing, you know, this whole, I mean, that can be such a beautiful insight or realization on the spiritual path, is that, you know, you discover this wide open space, call it the absolute, or call it the ocean, or call it consciousness, or call it awareness, or call it presence, or whatever. In the end, it doesn't matter. You know, we depending on your conditioning, you'll use a different word for it. But in the end, you know, it can be a beautiful realization to discover this wide open space of awareness behind thoughts, behind feelings, behind sensations. You know, it's like you discover the ocean behind, and you can see where this is going. You discover the ocean behind the waves. And that can, I mean, I know in my own experience years ago, that provided so much freedom to discover that spaciousness, that vastness, that presence, that awareness. But what happened in my experience was I started to identify with that. I started to identify with the absolute. I started to identify with awareness. So I thought I discovered freedom from all identity, and actually what I was doing, I was just identifying with something new. I was identifying with awareness. So I'm not a person. You know, I disidentified with the person, and now I'm not a person, and I know that, and that's my new identity. I'm no one. I am awareness. You know, I mean, I guess it's what I needed at the time. I guess at the time it provided so much freedom, and I discovered. I mean, it was an incredible insight, and so much suffering did fall away actually in that discovery. But you see, at that point, I thought I was finished. I thought, I've done it now. I've come. This is my conclusion. Like life is concluded. It's finished. It's over. I'm no one. But you're absolutely right. There was still that subtle, or actually not so subtle, when you really think of it. It's not so subtle at all. Division between awareness and contents of awareness, or between no one, I am no one, or I have no self. And then you look out at the world and you see all these other people who have selves, you know, and you separate, and you feel subtly superior to them because you have no self, or you're no one, or you're non-dual, right? You're non-dual, although of course there's no one here to be non-dual. So you become very clever with language, but subtly you're still, or not so subtly, you're separating yourself. You're separating yourself from everyone else who is still dual, or they still have or whatever. I mean, you can play this game in a million different ways, and it's a game. Really, it's a game.
Reminds me of a joke. You want to hear a joke?
Please.
So the rabbi and the cantor are in the synagogue, and I think it's called a cantor. I'll say that, but I think that's the term. And the rabbi is very humble, and he's saying, "Oh, I am no one, I am no one, I am no one." And then the cantor sort of hears him saying that. He kind of chimes in, "Yes, I am no one, I am no one." And then the janitor who's sweeping the floor hears them saying that, and he starts getting into it. "Oh, yes, I am no one, I am no one." And then they overhear him, and the rabbi says to the cantor, "Ha! Look who thinks he's no one."
That's great. Oh, absolutely. It just becomes another position. Although it's at that place, it can become so tricky because I know years ago I was more blind than ever at that point. I was more blind than ever. I think I really believed I was no one. I had no self. Blah blah blah. But
I mean, what happened at that point if you stub your toe or something? Or wasn't there a heck of a lot of someone?
Well, there was a lot of denial going on.
Oh.
There was a lot of denial going on. You see, it was like, I am no one. I have no feelings. Right. I have no thoughts. I have no feelings. I am beyond human. I am beyond the human experience. You know? And secretly, behind the scenes, it's not possible. It's just because it's more illusion. It's not. It's and it became exhausting actually, because it just becomes another image to have to hold up. I thought I was free from all images, and actually I was still very subtly holding up this image that I was no one.
Yeah.
Because it would have to be an image. It would have to be an image, you know, to even speak the words "I am no one" or "there is no one." You already know a hell of a lot about yourself. You know a hell of a lot about yourself if you know that you're no one. You know.
Since we're saying, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll just quickly finish this ocean and the wave thing, because this is why I use this metaphor these days, because it's so beautiful. Because in the end, you can't. In the end, the ocean is inseparable from the waves. So in the end, this is not a rejection of the wave. It's not I am not the waves, because that becomes a new definition of yourself. In the end, what you are as the ocean is inseparable from everything that appears, and so that's when this becomes. It's no longer a cold rejection of humanity. It becomes a total embrace of our humanity, of thoughts, of feelings, of sensations. And so ultimately, you could say, you know, there's no separate self here, but what I am is just this space. But in the end, whatever that is inseparable from all the stuff that appears. So then it's no longer, well, then you can't even say that you're no one. I mean, that's when the adventure really begins. I can't even say that I'm no one. I have, you know, that seems too much. It's still too much heavy identity. I'm no one. I mean, how exhausting to have to be no one. Ugh. Ugh. So what a relief these days to be able to be human. I mean, really fully human again. You know, this really becomes, for me in a way, this has just become a total celebration of humanness, of being. And I have no way of knowing what this is. It's not like I know what this is, but whatever it is, it's there appears to be this body and sounds and coffee and tea and pain, and you know, it's like it's all included, right? It's all included. So for me, that pointer there is no one. Actually, I think what it really means, it's not I'm no one, but you're still someone, or it's not I used to be someone and now I'm no one, as if or like I was a person and then magically one day the person fell away and now I'm no one. That's all mystification. That's all more of the old Enlightenment myth. In the end, truly being what does it mean to truly be no one? It means that you can be anyone in that sense. And no one and someone are not two. Being no one really means I can be fully myself. I can be, I can be whatever's happening in this moment. If that's sadness or pain or fear or anything, like it's all embraced. And that's, to me, that's what non-duality is really about, I think. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying this is the truth of non-duality. I'm just saying in my own experience. It's really, because I can only speak from my own experience. This seems to be what it's all about. Because in the end, I think it would have to be a total embrace of life. It would have to be, because it is life. That's what it is, life. So it has to be a total embrace of life. I can't imagine it being anything else.
There's several thoughts that come to mind. I mean, one is that I think we need to explore this I am no one business a little bit more so people know what we're talking about in case they don't. But but one thought that comes to mind is that whatever we're talking about, it's not conceptual. I mean, you're not sort of advocating that a person entertain certain concepts and on the basis of those concepts their life is going to be a certain way. If this is to be real, then it has to sort of be in your bones and your blood. It's a living reality that is not lost by virtue of forgetting about it, nor is it lived by virtue of thinking about it. It's just as natural as breathing, as spontaneous as digesting. It's just the platform or the foundation on which you are living. It doesn't matter what you think or don't think about or understand or don't understand or anything else. It's experiential, not conceptual.
Absolutely. I mean, you could. That's the thing about non-duality. It's so easy to take all this stuff on as just a new belief system.
Yeah, read a lot of books, learn the lingo.
Easy. It's easy to learn.
Yeah.
You read a few books, you pick up the idea that there's no self. So now you have a self just believing there's no self. And nothing changes. That's the thing. Yeah. Nothing changes. You have a wave in the ocean simply believing that it's not a wave. But the point is it still experiences itself as a separate wave. It still experiences itself as separate from the ocean. And that's what this whole thing's really about. What we long to no longer be separate from life. We long to, I mean, there's so many ways of saying it again. It depends on, like pick your favorite words, but it's like we all long to come home. It's like the wave in the ocean
longs to remember its oceanhood.
Oceanhood. That's a great word. It longs to return to the ocean because it doesn't realize, this is the thing, because it doesn't recognize who it really is. It's already the ocean but doesn't realize it. And so it goes off into the world of time and space and starts to seek the ocean in a million different ways. That's on the most basic level. I think that's what everyone's doing in this world. We're all looking for the ocean. We don't consciously realize we're doing that. We're looking for what we already are. We don't realize we're doing it. We just experience ourselves as going out into the world and looking for fame, looking for wealth, looking for power, looking for success, or looking for enlightenment. The same thing, really. We're looking for something in the future. Something will complete me one day. It's always one day. One day I'll find what I'm looking for, and then I'll be complete. So the wave that longs for the ocean could start to believe in non-duality. The wave takes on a non-duality belief system. So the wave starts to believe it's not a wave. The wave starts to believe it has no self. Or the wave starts to believe it's not seeking anymore. And still underneath, it's still desperately seeking, desperately longing. So in the end, all the beliefs in the world they're not going to do this. You're absolutely right. This has to get into your bones. It's an experiential thing.
Yeah.
That's why. So before, when I was talking about when I was stuck in the non-duality concepts that I am no one and I have no self. So the beauty of life is that it wouldn't let me get away with it. There was still suffering. There was still seeking. There was still longing. So there was someone who had convinced themselves they weren't seeking. So you can convince yourself of anything, but it's not going to end the seeking. It's not going to end the suffering, which I guess that's what this is really about, isn't it? It's the end of seeking. So what is the end of seeking? This is the question. Is the end of seeking something that will happen to you one day? Is the end of seeking an event, an experience that will happen to you one day if you're lucky enough, or if you practice hard enough, or maybe it's grace, maybe it just descends on you one day? Or is the end of seeking actually a lot more simple and much more present. Is actually the end of seeking just another way of talking about life as it is, you know?
Well, I think there are two ways of keeping a dog at your door, you know. One is you can tie it there, and another is you can provide some nice delicious food. And if the food is there, the dog will just stay right there as long as there's food and as long as the dog is enjoying the food. So, I mean, you can say to people, stop seeking.
Yeah.
but if the sort of clarity of experience hasn't arisen where they're really actually living that fulfillment that you're alluding to, then it's not necessarily appropriate for them to stop seeking. They're not I mean, it could be a very false sort of cessation where they're really not fulfilled, but they sort of have this attitude of, oh, I'm no longer seeking.
Yeah, I mean, if it was that easy to stop seeking, if it was just a case of telling people to stop seeking, I mean, everyone would have done it by now, right? You know, if it was that simple, oh yeah, I should just stop seeking, of course. You know, it doesn't work like that, because even if that were true, even if it were possible to stop seeking for a while, it's not going to last. You know, the pain is going to return, fear is going to, all the human stuff, especially if, like, in relationship. I mean, that's these days I'm talking more and more about relationship, because that seems to be that's the place where the seeking mechanism seems to play itself out in its most concentrated form. You know, I mean, people might not be looking for enlightenment. You know, they might not be looking for completeness in that way, but we look for completeness in all sorts of ways. It's not just about the spiritual seeking in the end. You know, we look for completeness through other people. You know, in relationships, we're waiting for other people to complete us, or waiting for other people to understand us, or to approve of us, or to love us, or, you know, like we spend our lives waiting. So, and for me, that was a huge revelation years ago. Was, you know, at some point I wasn't looking for enlightenment anymore. You know, that whole thing fell away. I realized, you know, there was no such thing as enlightenment in the way I've been thinking about it. And at that point, you know, I really thought all my seeking was over. You know, but seeking can play out in much more subtle ways. You know, seeking plays itself out. I mean, in these big ways, in like, one day I'll become enlightened. But it also plays itself out in very subtle, in much smaller ways, in a way. You know, just the search in this moment to be free from this pain, to be free from this fear, to be free from, that's the same seeking. It's the same seeking. Or in a relationship, you know, as I just said, seeking wholeness from another person, not recognizing that what you are is already whole. So you start to wait for someone else to give you that wholeness, you know. And then that's when so much conflict in relationships can begin, because, you know, if you imagine that someone is giving you completeness, they can also take it away at any moment, you know. And then that's a source of huge conflict in relationship. Like, you were supposed to complete me, you know, you were supposed to make me feel happy, you were supposed to blah 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 blah, all these expectations on other people. So that's another way another way that seeking plays itself out. You know, it's not just looking for enlightenment, it's attempting to escape present pain, present fear, or it's attempting to get something from another person that they can't really give you in the end, because in the end no one can give you this. No teacher, no guru, no lover can give you the wholeness that you truly seek. So in the end, this is about letting go of looking for that wholeness outside of yourself. But that means that's not just the conceptual thing. Oh, I'm going to let go of it. You can't just let go of it in your you know, it has to be experiential.
You can't let go of it unless you've actually found
exactly.
Then the letting go is secondary. You know, it's automatic. I mean, it's like, I don't know, if you walk into your house, then the garden behind you is automatically forgotten because you're in the house. But if it's just like, I should forget the garden, it's still there. It'll just happen when you walk into the house.
Absolutely.
You know, this whole seeking word, it's sort of like a dirty word in non-duality circles. And personally, I think that it's a subtle point, but I think it needs to be explored. It's natural. We're hardwired to seek greater happiness, and we don't, you know, it's not something we're taught. It's something that we just do, and in fact, probably all life forms do it. And naturally, as you were saying, there's initially, at least, we seek that outwardly, this relationship, this new car, this whatever, but we keep finding that those things don't provide it, at least not in any lasting way.
Yeah, exactly. Not in a lasting way.
Yeah.
So what might happen? You get the new car, or the new lover, or the new job, or the new experience, the new spiritual experience.
Yeah.
I mean, the new awakening. Wonderful. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. This isn't like a rejection of all of that. Because that becomes another game. But it's really about seeing it for what it is. So you get the new car or the new enlightenment experience, and maybe for a while, for a moment, or for however long, the seeking seems to disappear, and there's completeness. And then of course it starts up again, because there's something that can't be completed, it can't be satisfied through objects, through people, through things, through experiences.
Yep.
And on some level, I think every human being has a sense of that. We all know that however much money we have, however many possessions we have, however successful we are, however famous we are, or however enlightened we are, whatever that means to us, in the end it doesn't satisfy us. It doesn't satisfy. So where is this completeness that we're looking for? Are we really going to find it in time? Is it something that we can find through doing, or actually is this wholeness already present within this present experience? And that it's like we're looking for, and you're right, there's something very natural about it. We're looking for freedom from pain, freedom from fear, freedom from sadness. Maybe there's something quite natural about, when you experience pain, especially physical pain, for example, you want to do something about it. You want to lessen the pain, right?
Sure.
It's so natural.
You take your hand off the hot stove,
Exactly.
You don't have to think about it.
Or when you're hungry, even simpler, when you're hungry, there's something incredibly natural about
seeking food,
looking for food. But I think what humans do that I don't think any other organism appears to do, we don't just seek shelter or food or whatever. We seek completeness, and that's a different game, which we're trying to complete ourselves. That's a different game.
I see that as a good thing, because humans have the evolutionary capacity or whatever to sense that there is a completeness somehow to be found, and so they seek it.
It's I wouldn't say it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's
I guess it's characteristic of the human species.
It's evolved.
It's a more evolutionary characteristic. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably inevitable that an organism in which the capacity for abstract thought has evolved, that organism is going to naturally be a seeker of completeness. So from that perspective, it's natural. It's the most natural movement. On that level, we can't really judge it. It's life. It's a perfect, in that sense, even the seeking is a perfect expression of life. Now, the thing about seeking is that it's also what causes all of our suffering. It's the mechanism behind all of our psychological suffering, because I mean, where it goes in the end is we don't allow ourselves to feel pain, to feel fear, to feel sadness, because we're so busy trying to move away from it and reach some future completeness. Because we're so conditioned that all of these things, that pain, fear, sadness, whatever, we're so conditioned to believe that these feelings aren't part of the completeness. You see, what if the completeness actually includes all the stuff that we're trying to run away from? Ultimately, I mean, if I have a headache, I might take some aspirin. Like I had an operation in the hospital a few years ago, and extreme, physical pain, and so I took some morphine. The nurse gave me, and it's like that. There's an intelligence there as well, but the real question is what happens once you've taken all the medicine? You've taken all the medicine you can take. What happens once you've done everything that you could possibly? So I'm not saying stop doing what you're doing. Of course, you're free to do anything you want to get rid of pain or whatever. But in the end, what happens once you've done everything that you can do? Then what? Then that's when it becomes interesting. That's when it becomes really interesting. That's when it's like, well, maybe this is life too. Maybe this pain, or at least I call it pain, I call it fear, I call it sadness, I call it negative. We split positive and negative and seek the positive. Again, it's not a judgment of that. But so easily that leads to present moment resistance. You know, it leads to not allowing ourselves to really feel what we feel. You know, trying to escape this moment. That's where it leads to. You know, so seeking in itself is a very natural evolution of life. But look what happens. You know, and look at the suffering that can come from that. You know, incredible suffering.
I don't think seeking necessarily has to be an evasion of what we're feeling and experiencing right now. I mean, that very same impulse can be kind of turned around and used as a sort of an exploratory tool to actually feel more acutely and more directly what it is you're experiencing. You know,
Yeah, I think it depends how we use the word seeking.
Yeah.
We might be
I think the word can have a positive connotation.
Oh yeah, I mean this is, I guess when I use the word seeking, for me the word seeking
has the escape connotation.
Well, it's the search in time for completeness. It's looking for completeness in time, which basically means, you know, if you're looking for completeness in time, on some level you're not seeing the completeness that is already here. So maybe when you just use the word seeking, that's what you were pointing to, was coming to, you know, to discovering the completeness that's already here.
Yeah, I think there's both a healthy and a sort of an unhealthy aspect of it.
Yeah.
But you know, the funny thing is, these days, like when you just said the thing about seeking completeness in time, these days when I hear almost anybody say almost anything, I simultaneously agree and disagree with them. I sort of see the paradoxical opposites.
Yeah.
You know, and I see, yes, you're absolutely right. You know, completeness is here now, and yet, to take the opposite, you know, there's a growing fullness of completeness, sort of a deepening and an enhancement or whatever, that, you know, 5-10 years down the line, if you were to suddenly snap from this to that, you might think, whoa, that's quite a contrast. This is much more full. This is much more clear or deep or whatever. But that somehow the two don't invalidate each other, you know?
Yeah, it's a paradox. I mean, I agree with you. I agree and just disagree with everything as well.
Me too.
Because I think that's healthy. You know, I think that's really healthy. It does seem like a total paradox. It does, you know, because on one level, life is absolutely complete as it is. Like right now, these thoughts, these sensations, these feelings, this is the ocean. This is everything that I was ever looking for. This is, you know, a perfect expression of completeness. And who knows, I might not have tomorrow. You know, I'm not guaranteed this evening. You know, so it's like that. That's I mean, for me, in my experience, discovering that was the real freedom. Was it's here and now. And that's what a lot of these spiritual teachings are pointing to. Is, you know, it's here and now. At the same time, that's, if we go back to this, the ocean and the wave metaphor. Mm-hmm. I think this is a really important point, because I've met so many people kind of struggling with the paradox of this, you know, because so it's like, on one level I'm already complete, but there does seem to be some kind of deepening or opening, but then doesn't that involve, is that still seeking? Is that still, it's like I'm complete, but I can be more complete, and one day I'll be more complete, you know, and then we start seeking that bigger completeness. And isn't that part of the same mechanism, looking for more, you know? It seems like a real paradox. And I struggled with this myself for a long time, you know, because I meet a lot of people who, they've had some big awakening experience or enlightenment experience. They've had some very, you know, deep and profound insight that it's all the ocean. You know, they've had a very profound seeing, insight, knowing, whatever you want to call it. That everything is the ocean. That every wave that appears, it is the ocean. And in that sense, life is already complete. You know, but then what happens, I think, is certainly the people I've met, and this, in my own experience as well, what happens is life doesn't stop there. You know, the waves of life. So by waves, I just mean anything in present experience is a wave. So a thought is a wave, a sensation, a feeling. You know, everything is a wave. So the waves keep coming. The waves keep coming. So, you know, you might have seen yesterday that everything is the ocean. Wonderful. You might have had a very profound insight yesterday, and call it enlightenment or call it awakening, it doesn't matter. You might have had a very profound insight yesterday or earlier today or 5 minutes ago that everything is the ocean, every wave is the ocean. But the waves keep coming, so, you know, what about this wave and this wave and this wave? What about this pain and this fear and this joy and this sadness and this thought? That's not going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
The waves don't stop. That's just the idea of the seeker, is that the waves are going to stop one day. You know, that's a wave. A wave imagines that the waves are going to stop or the waves are going to start. That's more illusion, actually. Mm-hmm. The waves can't stop because the waves are life too, because the waves are the ocean, you see. So then people can become very confused at this point, because they go, well, I thought I was awakened, but life is still happening, and I'm still suffering. And sometimes people actually, they suffer more than ever after the so-called awakening. They suffer more than ever because they thought, well, because they had all these ideas of what awakening was supposed to be, or I had this idea that I was never going to suffer, because that's what it can feel like sometimes. You know, when you have this awakening, it feels like you're never going to suffer again. You can't even imagine suffering ever again. It's like it blows everything apart. You can't, because who's going to suffer? There's no one here to suffer. You know, it blows that all away. But again, life and its infinite compassion is not going to let you get away with that. The waves keep coming. So
yeah,
in that sense, every wave that appears, if it's pain, if it's sadness, if it's whatever it is, it's an invitation back to the ocean. So I think this is where you realize it's not a paradox at all, because on one level, everything is the ocean already. Every wave that appears is there. Even the most intense suffering, if that happens, that's the ocean appearing. At the same time, though, every wave, it's also an invitation to see the ocean in that wave. So it's like everything is the ocean anyway, whether you see it or not. So that's the already completeness. That's the ever-present completeness. But at the same time, these waves keep coming, and like it's this constant invitation. Oh, that's the ocean too. Oh, that's the ocean too. So it's like everything's complete, and there's this constant invitation to see that complete in this way, and that doesn't stop. Nope. So you could call that a deepening. You could call it a deepening or whatever. But I like to talk about it as it's like the constant invitation, you know, and the waves can get subtler and subtler.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, even these little tiny little, that's included as well.
That's what I would mean by deepening, is subtler and subtler, or at least one way of thinking of it.
Subtler and subtler, yeah. So, but in the end, it's not. This is where it gets a bit confusing, because it's not really that I'm deepening in the sense. It's not that a separate person is going deeper into something.
No.
It's more like any remnants of the separation are kind of dying, you know, and that could go on forever, and that, you know, but it's no longer I'm going to deepen, you know, I'm going to deepen because I'm going to become. It's no longer about that anymore. It's like it's just life. That's what life is. Life is just the constant invitation to see.
Another way of putting it might be that the embodiment is somehow becoming fuller. The embodiment of that realization. I mean, if we think of ourselves as sort of sense organs of the infinite, you know, then there's, you know, we can be the infinite, but there's infinite capacity for the sense organ to be refined, or to be, you know, more capable. Like for instance, take the analogy of electricity. We have basically the one underlying electrical field, but you have light bulbs of varying luminosities, and there can be a little 25 watt or they can be a 1,000 watt bulb. They're both grounded in the same electricity, but they have different sort of physical structures which enable them to kind of radiate light differently. And so like that, even our own physical structure, or whatever, not only physical, whatever makes up this instrument, can become over time, can become a brighter and brighter emitter, so to speak, using the light metaphor. But that doesn't mean that the electrical field, which it essentially knows itself to be, is getting any better or bigger or zappier or anything like that. It is what it is. So there's simultaneous completeness and simultaneous growth. And the two are not in conflict.
Exactly. There's no paradox. When you really see what's going on, there's absolutely there's no conflict. There's no paradox. Right. You know, there's no paradox at all. Mm-hmm. It's. I mean, this stuff used to drive me insane. You know, really, like it really. Yeah. I think it drives a lot of people crazy, because there's some teachers say there's nothing you can do. You know, everything is seeking. Give up seeking. Blah blah. There's no deepening. It's just this. And the thing is,
I agree with him.
Exactly, I agree with him.
But I also take the opposite.
Exactly. But then you see, it's not even the opposite. I don't see it as opposites anymore. It's yes and, you know, it's like, and yet it's like, you know, it's absolutely. I agree with you totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and
this, yeah.
and this and this wave and this wave. You know, so it's like it's all inclusive. It's just all inclusive. That's why I find it hard to call myself a non-duality teacher anymore. You know, because it's. What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Well, it puts you in a conceptual box that you may not.
Yeah.
That really might not be suitable. Yeah.
I was going to say as well. This is the beauty of relationships. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Relationships probably more than anything else. Maybe everything in life is a relationship actually, but especially
true.
Intimate, personal relationships. You know, I mean, talk about deepening. You know that. An intimate personal relationship is always gonna bring up those waves in you that aren't being fully accepted, or another way of saying it, that, you know, you're going to constantly be reminded of the things you're still holding on to, you know, what you're still defending, the images of yourself that you're still defending, because the moment you try to defend any image of yourself, even if it's very, very subtle, conflict is going to result, you know, in relationship, because you see yourself as this thing, and it could be anything. It could be enlightened. It could be, I see myself, or successful, or strong, or it could be something very, very subtle, you know. And the beautiful thing about other people is they're not always going to agree with you. They're not always going to see you how you want to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
They're not always going to see you how you see yourself, even if you want to be seen as no one, you know. And I've learned more from intimate personal relationships than anything else. I really think so, because, you know, years ago when I was really trapped in the I am no one thing, you know, that's not going to hold itself up in an honest relationship, in a brutally honest, intimate, personal relationship. You're not going to be able to play that game.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. I mean,
Ram Dass said, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your parents.
Absolutely. I really think, you know, enlightenment, it's like non-duality is the easy stuff, right? I'm no one here knows. That's the easy part in a way. Mm-hmm. Relationship is that's the adventure. That's like the final frontier, you know, really. It's going to bring up, if you're willing to look at it. If you're not willing, forget it. You know, if you think you're done, I'm awakened, I'm done, I'm no one, then great. I mean, then who am I to judge in the end? Who am I to judge? But
well, if you can find a partner who thinks the same way, then maybe you get away with it. I don't know, but
good luck, you know. But then you're gonna end up shutting yourself off to so many people. You know, you're gonna end up you're only gonna be able to hang around or be around a very small number of. It's gonna become another separation game, you know, because people are gonna remind you, you know, that actually, God, I'm not even no one. You know, I mean, and that years ago that used to really upset me, because I was so sure that I was no one. So I keep on coming back to this whole note, because it's so fascinating, really.
No, it is.
It's just I don't think this gets talked about enough in like the non-dual circles, because it's kind of like a little shadow, or maybe a big shadow, that I think it needs to be talked about, because I think a lot of people go through this.
And this whole no one business, maybe it's useful to point out why a person would feel that. I mean, you know, ordinarily what we consider ourselves to be, you ask somebody who they are, and they give you their name, they give you their job, they give you their age, their likes, their dislikes, you know, all kinds of descriptive things about their relative personality, and that's, you know, actually what they perceive themselves to be. But, you know, what you're referring to is a discovery that people eventually encounter, which is that, whoa, I'm none of those things, and I don't appear to be anything definable. And therefore there can be this sense of no one. There's this sort of identification, as you said earlier, with the absolute or with the unmanifest. And that doesn't have any of these definable, explainable characteristics. And so what am I? I seem to be no one. You know?
I'll tell you a little story. I think this is so beautiful. I think it says it all. I was doing a meeting, and it was last year sometime. I was doing a meeting, and during the meeting, this woman was speaking to me, and she was saying how, you know, she's discovered what you've just been talking about. She's discovered that she's no one. She has no identity. She's free from the self, you know, and her life has, you know, it's completely changed, and so much freedom and peace. But she said to me, Jeff, there's one thing that I just don't understand, and I asked her what it was, and she said it's my children. It's my children. they still think I'm their mother. You know, and this was really causing her a lot of suffering, actually, because she just didn't understand it. How can they not see who I really am? I don't, you know. And there was a lot of judgments about her kids, and then so what was happening was that, you know, they were saying to her, they were saying, "Mummy, mummy," and she wasn't able to hear it. You know,
well, you know, I bet you if one of them got hit by a bus, her feelings of being a mother would very much come to the fore.
But this was why she was suffering. This is why life is so compassionate. In the end, life wouldn't let her get away with it, and that's it gave her suffering. Something didn't fit. You know, on some level, she still longed to connect with her children, but in her "I am no one" state, she had like lost the ability to, and so life doesn't let you get away with it. You know, I mean, if you're honest, and I think she was honest about this. She was honest that she was still suffering. You see,
she just swung to that extreme.
And so
hadn't integrated it.
And she was telling me, she was saying, "Jeff, I don't understand it. Why do they see me as their mother? You know, can't they see who I really am? I have no identity. I'm not identified with anything." And I said to her, "Yes, you are. You're totally identified." And she was like, "Huh?" I said, "You're totally identified with not being their mother, and that's why it hurts. And that's why it hurts so much."
Yeah.
That's why, because your kids are coming along and they're threatening that image. You know, that's intimate relationship. You know, if you're willing and open, like allow yourself to be allow your images to be threatened. You know, find what hurts. You know, like I used to be so terrified of conflict, like interpersonal conflict, and you know, and I would always try and run away from it. But these days, I just see conflict is. It's just a wonderful opportunity, really, to really take an honest look, see what are you still defending, what image of yourself are you still defending, and it could be something as subtle as, you know, one of these spiritual concepts, like I'm not their mother, because then what happens ultimately, you know, she's defending that image, she stops being able to listen to her children, she loses the connection, which is what she really longs for. That's what she's really looking for. She doesn't really long to not be their mother. She doesn't really long to be no one. What she longs is just for that intimacy, and that means death. That's like, intimacy is death. I mean, real intimacy. It's so what has to die, you know, for her, what had to die, or at least be seen through or let go of, was this image that she wasn't their mother, and then that's when she could meet them. And then you know, ultimately, are they my children? I don't know who they are. You know, I really do. Am I their mother? Ultimately, those are all roles. You know, but I am not their mother is another role that I have, and it becomes another burden. Why do we need these stories about ourselves? What, you know, even the story we have no story. You know, what are we afraid of? You know, so that, I think, just kind of pointing this out to her. I mean, was it, you know, once she could see what she was doing to herself, once she could see what she was still defending, that there was the freedom in just seeing it, you know, and. Because often it becomes so subtle sometimes, you know, we don't see what we're still defending, and that's why I love doing these meetings and, you know, retreats, because there's something so beautiful about kind of gathering together and just shining light on this, some very subtle stuff, you know. Because I know it kept me so trapped. I mean, I was like so shut off from life and from everything. And there's something so beautiful about just sharing this this possibility of well, whatever this is, I don't know what it is, but this possibility of recognizing who you really are, you know, but not as a mental thing, because it doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work, you know.
It's interesting. You know, I hear a lot of teachers, or whatever you want to call them, and like the people at the conference that we were just at, and people of that ilk, getting up, and basically what their presentation has to do with a description of life as they see it, or of their experience. It's kind of an articulation as best as they can do it of how life appears to them. And very often they don't have much more to offer than that. And so people sit and they listen, and I think it can be either helpful or confusing or somewhere in between, depending on where you're at. It can be helpful if you're kind of close to that in terms of your own experience, and just that sort of, like, I'm reading Rupert Spira's book right now, and I'm reading each verse about 3 times, and it's like I can sort of feel a wave of clarity wash over me with each one. It kind of, it's like it's kind of like fine tuning a radio. It just kind of gets you more tuned in to sort of settle down on those ideas that he's presenting. But if you're not very close to that, I think it can cause confusion, because there's this sort of great gap between your experience and what the person is articulating. Yeah. And you can end up, as you say, you can end up trying to make a religion out of it, or build an edifice of beliefs that you cling to and become fundamentalist about, or whatever. There can be great misinterpretation and confusion. So I don't know. It's sort of, I guess people gravitate toward that which is useful for them, and if it's not useful, then they'll just gravitate away and find something which is, and then, so it all kind of works out in the end.
It does. It has a funny way of working itself out in the end. I mean, my experience was funny, because I was never with a guru. I was never with a teacher. I never went to a retreat. I never, all my spiritual seeking, I was a desperate spiritual seeker. I was an obsessive spiritual seeker. I just wanted freedom from this suffering, and and that manifested as the search for enlightenment. I thought I would find enlightenment one day. And
so what were you doing? Reading books?
I'm
surprised you never actually went and checked out some teachers if you had such a strong desire.
Well, I don't know what it was. Is my conditioning, whatever. I mean, I was intensely private, intensely self-conscious and shy and shut off. I mean, I didn't know anyone. I didn't. Because for me, it all happened quite suddenly. I had this breakdown, basically.
Tell me about that.
In my early 20s. Well, I think I'd been depressed my whole life.
Without really knowing.
Without realizing, I just thought that's the way I was. Because when I was younger, I never had any friends. I never spoke to anyone. I mean, I didn't really speak until I was about 20. I mean,
that's
really,
funny, because you're such a friendly, outgoing guy now.
I know. It's, when I think about it, it's crazy, really. I mean, the whole thing is.
We're talking about just 10 years ago, basically.
Yeah. Well, less actually.
You're just 31 now.
I mean, I was. I mean, really, my whole child, I was just in my shell. I mean, I was just in my shell.
Interesting.
And I guess I was always depressed, but it got worse and worse. And in my early 20s, I was living in London in a job that I hated. I didn't know who I was, what I was doing, what I wanted. I was a mess. I was confused about everything, sexually confused, and confused about career, and I just didn't know how to live. I just didn't. I mean, I don't think I never really knew how to live. But it got worse and worse, and I was in a relationship with this girl, and it was incredibly intense, and she was going to save me, and I'd found my soulmate, and blah blah blah, and then that fell apart, and then I became physically quite ill. I mean, it all just happened at once, really. I mean, and I look back and I think, thank God that happened, really.
Yeah.
Because it forced me. I mean, that's what happened. I had this breakdown, and I was ill, and I was quite ill for a while, actually, physically quite ill. And I moved back. I quit my job in London. And I moved back to my parents' house in Manchester, and they were very sweet. They let me stay there. And so what began was just this fire. It was just, oh my God, who the hell am I? And I needed to know. I mean, this was like life or death now, because everything had fallen apart.
Yeah.
And I was on the verge of suicide, and it was like it was basically either I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to awaken. I mean, that was like I was living every day, every moment with this. I mean, this was I'd always been like a pretty obsessive creature, pretty obsessive character, but
I can relate.
Yeah. But so I got my hands on the spiritual teaching, I just started tearing them apart. I mean, I would just read a book a day, like book after book, Buddhism, Christianity, Zen, like books on meditation, and I mean, just everything. I can barely remember. I mean, I was just tearing through them, and I started to meditate and self-inquire, and but there was this like I needed to awaken, and I needed to awaken today. Like I wasn't going to wait till I could be dead tomorrow. That's how desperate it was. And this went on for about a year. I mean, I really locked myself. And so at the time, it just didn't come to me to go to a teacher. I mean, I don't know why. It wasn't part of my makeup. It wasn't.
Yeah.
mean, I think a couple of times I considered it. I think. I mean, I remember, I would turn to the back cover of books and look at the photos of the teacher and kind of stare. I would stare because I was into the whole guru thing for a bit. I thought their energy. I thought somehow I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what I thought. But I made a few. At some point I was going to go to London to see a teacher, but at the last minute something just stopped me. I don't know what it was. It was like maybe it was a stubbornness, or it was maybe it was the sense. Look, if there is any truth here, I have to find it myself. Maybe because I was a real before I'd been a real atheist. I was trained in science in rational thinking, and I went to Cambridge, studied astrophysics, and so maybe there was some of that there, some cynicism or something. I just knew I'm going to find this myself. Well, whatever it is, if I can't find it myself, it can't be real. It has to be. It will be secondhand. I wanted to find something. I knew that from the beginning. It had to be firsthand. I didn't quite know what I was looking for, but somehow I knew it had to. It had to be experiential. I had to. If it's not how this. Why do I need to go to India? Whatever it is, it's got to be here too. It's got to be here in this house, in sitting in my parents' yard, looking at the flowers. It has to be here. So maybe that's why I never saw a teacher. But that was just my way.
Yeah, it's just the way you were wired. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I started doing a lot of practices, but in the end, for me, I just did a lot of sitting. I just did a lot of sitting with my pain and my fear and my sadness and just sitting in suffering, because it started to dawn on me that maybe freedom isn't to be found through escaping. Maybe somehow it's, if I sit here long enough in this sadness, in this fear, in this pain, something will reveal itself. I didn't know. So what happened? To finish the story now.
So somehow you broke through to this.
Well, it broke
this I am nobody state at a certain point.
Well, yeah, I had certain experiences happen, certain realizations. I had a very profound happening realization I've talked about before. It's like seeing a chair, and I mean that was quite profound actually. It's really hard to talk about. I can't. I say that I went through phases, but the experience is never as clear cut as that. It was all very messy.
Sure.
The whole thing was incredibly messy. One day I realized I was no one. The next day I was back into huge amounts of suffering. It wasn't. Yeah. We like clean, clear stories, don't we? But the truth of experience.
A lot of people go through a phase like that where they swing back and forth.
Swing back and forth. Yeah.
And eventually it sort of stabilizes or gets integrated or something.
Yeah, I mean,
and really, I don't know if you're insinuating this, but I would suggest that that whole phase you went through had its value. Sometimes people say, well, now I'm realized, and nothing I ever did or nothing you could ever do could actually bring you to this realization. But I think it's like we go through stuff for a reason. And I mean, in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali classifies seekers or yogis in terms of mild, medium, and intense. And then among the intense, various stages. And then the most is the most intense is like vehement intensity. He uses that word, and he says that in fact, those with the most vehement intensity do tend to realize the most, quickly or readily.
Well,
and,
yeah.
And there's a lot of people with stories like. I mean, there are other people who just wake up one morning and kapow.
Well, you know what? I think I've thought about this a lot. I think we love the dramatic stories. In a way, those are the stories that sell. I mean, it's often the people who have been through the dramatic seeking and the dramatic waking up. Those are the people who tend, for some reason, they're the ones who tend to write books and do talks. But then
they make for good books.
It was great. Yeah, we love our dramatic stories. And for some reason, those are the people who tend to do the talking, but then this whole new kind of mythology begins. Well, so it's like only the people who write the books and do the talking, they must be the only one. Only the people with the dramatic stories are the real ones,
Yeah.
But I've met so many. I mean, that's what the beauty of doing these meetings over the years, is I've met so many people who, they don't go out and talk about. They don't write books. They don't have much interest in it. They go about their ordinary everyday lives. They're doctors and therapists and artists, and they see this or get this, or however you want. I mean, however you want to say
Absolutely.
it. But it was a very for them. It was a very gentle. They never really went through some big dark night of the soul. You know, of course, everyone suffers to an extent. I don't think there's any human being who has escaped suffering totally. You know, but their suffering was more gentle somehow, and their seeking was more. And it doesn't mean their experience is any more or less valid. You know.
No, I totally agree.
That's one of those myths. That's one of those myths. You know.
Yeah, I just wouldn't weight it one way or the other. I would say however it works out for you or you or you, you know, find that that's the way it is for you, and don't compare yourself with somebody else. And don't say that, well, you know, because it was this way for me, it's got to be this way for everybody, or whatever.
It's like the way, you know, everyone's trying to come home, and like
all paths lead to Rome.
All paths lead to Rome, and all paths lead to home, because in the end we are home. This is the point. The wave is already home and doesn't realize it, so it seeks home. So in that sense, you can understand, you know, why some of these non-duality teachers say things like, "It doesn't matter what you do or don't do," or, you know, you can understand where that's coming from, because in the end, everyone's going to get here. But actually, it's interesting. You should talk about that, because I used, you know, years ago, I used to speak much more like that. That there's nothing you can do. You know, there's nothing you can do. This isn't the result of doing, and again, there is some truth to that. I don't really speak like that anymore, because I really see the problem with that now. I mean, that's going to be misunderstood so easily, because over the years, and it was a real revelation for me to see this, is, you know, I've met so many people, and they've been to non-duality meetings, they've been to these radical Advaita meetings, and they've picked up the concept, there's nothing I can do.
Right.
So
might as well crack a beer and watch football.
Yeah, but the point is they're still suffering. They're still suffering horribly, but now they're suffering with a belief there's nothing they can do about it. So in a way, they're doubly trapped.
Yeah, it seems like you become
they think
pessimistic.
It's very, I mean, so
there's a good analogy for this. Let me just throw it in here, and I'll get the sun. You know, is always shining, and once it sort of realizes its sunness, it might say, "Hey, I have always been shining." It never mattered what was happening with the clouds. You know, the clouds, no clouds, wind, no wind. It doesn't matter. I have always been shining. Nothing ever caused me to shine. You know, so that's valid from the point of view of the sun, but from the point of view of somebody on the ground or whatever, you know, we're stretching this metaphor, it makes a big difference whether the clouds are cleared away or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do to be what you already are. I think that's very clear. I mean, this presence, this awareness, being the sun, the light, I mean, call it what. There's nothing I can do to reach this, because I am already this. There's nothing the wave can do to reach the ocean.
Right.
But there is the possibility of recognizing itself as the ocean. And that's when I think the non-dual message can be really misunderstood, because it's, okay, so there's nothing you can do. It's not about doing to get somewhere, because that could just be more seeking. It's not about I'm going to do this to reach what I am. But at the same time,
there's one thing the wave can do to realize it's the ocean. It can settle down.
Well, this is it. There's
nothing. Relax.
There's nothing you can do, but there's a lot to see. You know, there's a lot to. It's not about the doing so much. It's the recognition. It's the seeing. You know, which isn't. I mean, I guess in the end it depends what you mean by the word doing, because that's a funny word as well. What does it mean to do? You know, it's like. It's not so much doing, it's more recognizing what is already present, you know, which isn't about doing something in time. It's recognizing what is already here now, recognizing the waves that are already present are the ocean, but they are already this is the thing, the waves are already the ocean.
Yeah.
But if the wave just tells itself, if the wave is just telling itself there's nothing I can do, and it still hasn't recognized what it really is, it doesn't, you know, it's and I've met so many people as well. And I mean, I just meet myself over and over again. You know, it's funny when I say I meet people who I also think, well, that's also me. You know, it's like it's all the same. It's all the same seeker, really. It's all the same. We all kind of go through the same stuff, really, if we're honest. And I've completely forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I think you were kind of saying that you meet a lot of people who are doing...
Yeah, they're doing, not doing.
They're doing stages that you have been through yourself, and so you can relate to what they're doing.
They're doing, not doing.
Yeah.
They're doing... that becomes their new practice. So they go to a teacher who says, there's nothing you can do, all doing is dualistic, it's all rooted in ignorance, blah, blah, blah. So then okay, so that's going to be my new practice. I'm going to give up doing. That's my new practice. That's my new doing. My new doing is to reject all doing and to make fun of people who do. And that's my new doing.
Yeah.
And then you get deeper and deeper into the do-do. You get deeper and deeper. Because it's just another... And secretly, you see, secretly, they're still seeking in it. And secretly, okay, if I give up doing, if I don't do, then maybe it will happen.
Yeah.
So it's still a form of seeking. Not doing, doing, not doing can still just be another form of seeking, And I think that's really cruel, I think, what some of these teachers do. And I don't think they intentionally mean to be cruel.
No.
I guess, and I know this is what, in a way...
They're just seeing it from their angle.
This is how I used to talk as well. I mean, until I saw what I was doing. On one hand, you say there's nothing you can do. You say there's nothing you can do, but you also say, but something will happen one day.
Yeah.
So it's like something has to happen. Like the person has to fall away, the self has to fall away, but there's nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So then all you're left to do. So there's nothing you can do but come to my meetings.
Right. Buy a few books.
Come and listen to me tell you how screwed you are, and nothing you can do.
Well,
and then just sit there and then just so people just end up helplessly. They're sitting there. They're still suffering. They've given up doing anything. They've given up exploring. They've given up looking. They've given up being interested by life. They think they're no longer seeking. Secretly, they're still suffering horribly, but they're probably more blind to that than ever. And now they just become dependent on the non-duality teacher who seems to have something that they don't, but won't let them in. Like the teacher won't let them into the party. It's like, and it's... I understand. I completely understand what these teachers mean when I completely understand what they're trying to communicate. But I think that's what's changed for me over the years as a speaker, teacher, whatever I am, is what I became more and more aware of. What I've become more aware of over the years. It's like it's one thing to. So I know what I'm talking about, right? When I use the words that I use, I know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I know what I mean in a way, but there's something to do with compassion. I think it's something to do with understanding that not everyone is going to understand what you mean, And it's like being willing to somehow come out of your own framework, come out of your own way of talking, and come into their world. It's like I used to speak in a very narrow. I used to have a very limited vocabulary when it came to talking about non-duality. And what I just saw, it was keeping people stuck. It was really, because I was sticking to my own. There is no me, there's no one here, there's nothing you can do, and it was becoming a new framework. Yeah. And of course I say, but there is no framework. There is no framework. Well, of course there's a framework. There has to be some kind of framework,
Well, there's a saying, and this is not meant to sound condescending, but speak to the level of consciousness of the listener.
Yeah,
it's not to say I am in a high state, you're in a low state, but this applies in every life, every phase of life. You don't teach trigonometry to a third grader or whatever. What people are at different stages of growth and different stages of experience and understanding, and the art of really being an effective teacher is to be able to tune into the level that they're at and provide them with something that's useful at that stage.
That takes a kind of humility, because
it does.
It's like a willingness to let go of your own way of talking, or your own language, even your own identity as a teacher. In a way, you have to be willing to die. A great teacher. I'm not saying this about myself.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. I
think a great teacher is able, in every moment, to die as a teacher, to no longer even know themselves, and then that's when they can meet. To not when I'm not even holding that idea of myself as a teacher between us, then I can meet you in your world, and it's. You're right. It's not even a condescending thing. It's not even I'm descending to your level out of compassion. I'm. It's not even that. It's like it's just because what's left, right? What's left just to meet. We just meet, And if I haven't got any idea of who I am, or if I haven't got an agenda, it's about the agenda. If I don't have an agenda, then I'm really free to just meet. Like my dad is a perfect example. My dad, he has no interest in spirituality and religion and in conscious. He just doesn't. He's never asked questions like that really. Bless him. His life has been. He's worked hard. He made money. He ran a business. He lost his business. He lost money. And now he's retired. and that's his life. And he seems to be fairly happy with that. I don't know, but he doesn't, so when he asked me, Jeff, what do you talk about? What's non-duality about? If I sit there and start to do the whole lecture, the consciousness, blah, 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 no one here, there's no self, blah, blah, blah.
You'll lose them.
That would be coming from my own agenda, my own need to be right, or my own need to appear as something, or, it's like with my dad, it's really been a case of having to drop all of my precious language, all of my precious words, all of my teachings, whatever. And, what does my dad understand? What's his world? His world is, and this takes really listening. This takes listening. It takes listening to people, finding out where they are. My dad's world is work, make money, retire. He loves his family, and so I tried talking to him, and I tried so many ways of explaining it, all these, and in the end I just had to drop all the language and just, right, Dad, so you were a businessman, weren't you? He gets that, you were a businessman, and now you're not. Yeah. And he says, yeah. So Dad, can you see how somehow that it doesn't define you? Then we started talking about identities and definitions and then that's when he starts to open up, you see.
Yeah, no, that's good.
But without using any of the fancy language or any of the I'm no one here and blah, blah. And that's when he opens up.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying that when the fruit is ripe, the branches bend down, and so the people can easily pick it. Oh, my wife says I've exhausted all my analogies. No, I've got a few more. And taking your example of saying to your dad, "There's no one here." I mean, he doesn't relate to that experience, so why say it? It's only going to create a gulf.
It's going to terrify him.
Yeah, it'll just sound like nonsense.
Yeah, and and I'm not in the business anymore of shocking people. I think maybe years ago that I would have enjoyed saying stuff like that just to shock people. It's good, but I'm not interested anymore. It doesn't. That's another phase you go through, I think, of wanting.
Well, if your goal is really to be of some value to them, then shock is not.
you have to meet them. You have to meet them, because what's left just to meet you.
Yeah,
and to meet you means, well, that's the intimacy again. It comes back to that's the death.
Mm-hmm.
I even have to let go of my precious idea of myself as a teacher, my precious idea of myself as no one. That's where we can meet. I'm not going to be able to meet my dad any other way. And it's the thing. We might not be able to meet tomorrow. This is the thing as well. We're human beings. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. It's like, can we meet now?
Yeah.
Can I drop my? What am I defending? That's, to me, that's it. It always comes back to that question. What am I defending? What image of myself am I defending? What am I trying to prove to you? And why? Where does it get me? It's doesn't make sense anymore to me. That whole I used to be such a missionary for non-duality, and I was gonna wake people up. And they were also, everyone's asleep, and they're also deluded. And I just say it's another game. It's another game. It's another game. It's another. I'm going to go and preach non-separation to people. I mean, how ironic.
Well, there's a subtle arrogance to it, wouldn't you say? A subtle sort of, kind of a spiritual egotism.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a holier than thou thing, kind of creeping beneath the surface there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're that way now, but we've all been through this. There's just sort of, you go in the grocery store and there's this sort of feeling of, this poor shop person, this poor person at the cash register. I'm so much more wise than they, and it's just it's an immature phase, I think, that hopefully we grow out of, and just eventually, there's no thought of that nature. You're just relating to the cashier and just.
But that's non-duality in the end. You're not going to find this in books. You're not going to find it from some guru. It's the man or woman at the cash register. That's if non-duality has anything to say about anything, it has to be there as well. It has to be at the gas pump.
Yeah, but at the gas pump.
Absolutely.
That's why we named it this.
Well, yeah. If it's not there at the gas pump, it's meaningless.
Yeah.
I always and I always used to be I think I was talking to someone the other day actually about this. I think what saved me from that whole Neo-Advaita from getting really stuck in that. There's no me. There's no past. There's no Africa. There's no Hitler. You know, all that. What really saved me was that I was always fascinated by human suffering. You know, and especially with my background, the Holocaust. You know, and the Nazi Germany and killing of millions of people.
Did you have like ancestors who were killed in the
Holocaust?
Yeah.
And so that's what. And for me, it was so interesting. It was always how do I bring these two together? You know, this neo-Advaita stuff. That there's no me, no you. There's no past. And at the same time, how can you deny? You know, you watch these documentaries and photographs, piles of human bodies.
Yeah.
How can I reconcile? Because it's too easy to sit here and say that never happened.
Yeah.
That's just a thought. It's too easy. It's
glib.
too glib. It's so easy to say. You're sitting here. You're well fed. You're warm. You know, try saying. There's no, you know, like I've heard teachers say this, that there's no Hitler. I've heard them say it, you know. Or I've heard teachers say crazy things like, you know, that I won't say who this was. They say oneness gases Jews. So what? You know, I've heard that. I've heard that, and I totally understand why. That's what gives non-duality a bad reputation. I mean, really, is it? And so what I was going to say is, it's easy to say that when you're sitting here, well-fed, warm. Try saying that when you're bloody inside a gas chamber.
Yeah, really. No, I mean, really. I'm tempted to say to some of these people, well, if there's really no one home, go down to the bank, take out all the money, and send me the check. You know, because it won't matter to you. There's nobody to whom that will matter. But I still identify myself as somebody who would enjoy receiving all that money. So send it this way.
Yeah. Otherwise, this just becomes a game of denial. It just becomes a silly game of denial. And denial is not freedom. I mean, in denial, you're more trapped than ever. You know,
it's a river in Egypt, actually.
That's what always saved me from the neo-Advaita hell was neo-Advaita was like, whatever this is, it has to be there. It has to be true whether I'm sitting here or whether I'm in a concentration camp. You know, whatever this is, it has to be true there as well. It has to be true there. You know, and so in that I'm in the concentration camp or whatever. All the fancy neo-Advaita ideas in the world aren't going to save me. You know, and I think that's what always kept me kind of grounded in a way.
Yeah. It's funny. I go through a similar fantasy in a way. I think, you know, how would whatever state I have hold up if I were subjected to crucifixion or something like that? How would I, you know, would I completely lose it, or would I, you know, would there be some kind of, you know,
well, that's the thing.
Acceptance? I don't know. You know,
if this is a state, if it's a feeling, if it's a belief, it will fall away. That's the thing. If it's, you know, if it's in the end, this has to be everything. That's why, that's the only thing that can't fall away is everything. If you think freedom is, or oneness is a happy feeling, or oneness is a feeling of peace, or oneness is absence of pain, or it's still all conceptual, you know, and that it's going to be like, again, life is going to come along and it's going to destroy it. That will be taken away. Yeah, you'll be standing there in the concentration camp, and you're not going to feel, you might not feel what you expected to feel, you know.
Yeah.
There might be a hell of a lot of pain and sadness, and like then the question.
And even if you don't experience or understand oneness to be all those relative attributes you just mentioned, I mean, is oneness grounded profoundly enough in your being that realization could withstand some extreme circumstance like that? You know.
To me, that was always the test. You know, that's always.
I mean, I haven't been through that test, but
no. Well, I haven't either. I mean, I've been in some pain.
You went through the hospital test, but
yeah, but the thing is, I don't. It's not like, you know, it's a test. It's not really like I'm going to test myself. It's more like, you know, whatever this is, it's. It has to be there in everything, you know. And it's, if it's a state, it will come and go. If it's a feeling, it will come and go. If it's so the question for me was always what doesn't come and go. What doesn't come and go, and can that be discovered now? Yeah. You know, because this is the end of safety. I can't kid myself anymore that tomorrow I'm not going to be in a concentration. I can't do that to myself. I can't pretend anymore.
You never know.
That's where compassion comes in. You know, I can't.
You might get some cancer or something and be in
I
agony.
Cannot pretend. I cannot kid myself any longer. You know, I live my life. You know, it felt comforting. It's comforting to kid yourself about. But in the end, I can't. You know, I have to open myself up to everything. So yes, of course, it's easy to sit here and do the neo-Advaita stuff. There's no meat, there's no suffering in the world, there's no starving children. It's easy. I mean, in a way, what does it mean? I mean, it's a catchphrase. It's yeah, there is a truth in it, but it's not true.
Yeah.
You see, it's like there's a truth in it. The moment you speak it, it's not true. That's how I see it these days. There's a beautiful, exquisite truth in it, and the moment you speak it, it becomes untrue. If it's not immediately, this is what it came down to for me. If it's not immediately balanced out by its opposite, so that I think I made a video about this. There's no Africa. Not true. There is an Africa. Now it's true. It's like, it's everything, because it's everything. It's like the crucifixion and the resurrection. I think Byron Katie talked about it like this. It's the crucifixion is I am no one. There's nothing. There's no past. The resurrection, somehow it completes itself with the resurrection.
Oh, interesting.
It's beautiful, that, isn't it? It's really
Never thought of it that way.
The crucifixion, it needs the resurrection to complete it. Then it's complete. Then it's really complete.
Yeah.
The crucifixion's only half the story. So it kind of returns as there is an Africa, there is a me, there is a you, there is a whole. Absolutely, there is suffering, there is pain, and that's where compassion. That's where compassion begins. Otherwise, there's no compassion. You see. So
true. I mean, the idea that oneness gassed the Jews, that's a very uncompassionate statement.
It's easy to say. It's the sort of thing. It's an easy thing to say, an easy thing to believe. And it might ultimately, in a sense, if you want, on some level, of course, it's all oneness or life, but
well, on that level, oneness didn't do it, because oneness doesn't do anything.
Doesn't do it exactly. Well, that's the truth as well. The truth is, human beings, we did it to each other. And let's get real. We do it to each other, and we do it to each other. We kill each other. We torture each other. Why? Because we don't see this. Because we don't see who we really are, because we don't see this intimacy, this compassion. We don't recognize ourselves as the ocean. So we start looking for it, and we start attacking other people who we think are getting in the way of it, right? These people, they're blocking my wholeness.
Interesting.
And you could probably, if you really looked at it, you could probably start to explain all violence. At least you can start to see where all conflict begins. Conflict. Where does conflict begin? It begins here. Me, you. Me, you. This is the beginning. This is where conflict. And that's where it ends.
She's hungry. As your perspective has evolved, the way we've been discussing, how have you noticed? What sort of changes have you noticed in your audiences, in your groups that come to on retreats and stuff? And not only how has your teaching evolved, but how is the sort of whole group consciousness changed, and the types of people who come, and the sort of interactions, or the level of spiritual maturity of the individuals, or all that sort of stuff. Have you noticed that your audiences have evolved along with you, in a sense?
It's hard to say exactly, but yeah, I have some sense of that. I know I've lost quite a few people since I started more and more kind of honoring the messy human stuff.
Yeah.
I think I used to speak to the people who used to come to my meetings were more kind of the Advaita, kind of hardcore non-duality Advaita crowd. A lot of them, they don't want to hear about the messy human stuff. They just don't want to. They come.
There's a neo-Advaita website that recently I heard accused Scott Killaby of being schizophrenic, because he's getting into all this sort of so-called messy stuff.
Well, we don't like paradox. We like our truth clean. We want it. We want consistent, clean truth. We don't like this messy human stuff comes along and it ruins our. But wonderful. That's wonderful. Great. So I've lost a few people, I think, but I think I've gained other people as well, and I think there's a much greater variety of people now who come to the meetings. It's
that's great.
Well, people who have never heard of non-duality before, artists and musicians, and people who really aren't into spirituality at all, because I think the way I speak has kind of opened up, and the language has kind of broadened, and I think it's more accessible somehow, and it's less dogmatic and more honor. It honors the relative more, so people get a lot less angry. That's incredible.
Oh, really? What were they getting angry about?
Well, the whole how dare you deny, you're denying the human stuff. And I think
see. Okay,
there was some truth in that. That made people, and I can understand now. And But it's so funny because in the early days, because I did speak much more from the the absolute perspective. I mean, I was never really a fundamentalist, but it was more, had more of that feel to it. Had more of that kind of slightly absolute, slightly beyond human, you know.
Right.
And so people sometimes reacted quite violently, you know, because
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if somebody's daughter dies or something, you just brush it off as though it didn't really happen. Then.
But you know what the trick is? The guru trick is it's like, oh, you're getting angry. That's a sign.
Right.
You're still stuck in.
Yeah.
You know.
And I'm
it's so tricky.
I have such equanimity here. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so clear, and if you don't understand, it's your problem because I'm totally clear. But for me, it was always. What I started to realize, well, maybe, again, it's a kind of humility in a way. It's like, well, maybe it's not that, it's not that I'm totally clear and they don't understand because they're deluded. Maybe this is the opportunity for me to meet them and to try to be more clear, try to clarify and let go of the old ways I used to talk about. And that's when things started to really move. That's when things. It was like listening. It was, what it was. I think it was listening to people's objections, but really listening. I think that's probably that and relationships have taught me more than anything. And maybe it is all relationship, isn't it? Listening to their objections, and not just passing them off as oh you don't get it. One day you'll get it.
Yeah.
It's just an arrogance to that. It's like this is a chance. Can I be more clear? Can I clarify something? Can I find a different way of saying it? Can I be more creative? More creative in the way I talk about this. And that really, the way I speak these days, it's only been a few years. It's so different now. Like I'm surprised. Like it's not that I consciously one day decided to speak differently. It was kind of like an evolution. It was like it naturally started to evolve as I listened more. I think it was. I've learned more from the people who come to my meetings than anyone else. I think it's just listening to them, the way they speak, the questions they have, the difficulties, the way they mishear, or just the way they express it themselves,
Yeah.
Like their language for this, the words they use, and like really some of the ways people express this, it's far more beautiful than it's really far than I could ever do. It's really moved me to tears. Some people in the meeting, the way they, in such a, without using fancy language, they don't see themselves as teachers. They don't have that identity. It's just it's natural expression,
So you were making a beautiful point, really, which is that you were saying that you've been the prime beneficiary of all this in a way. Talking to people in groups, it's become an exercise in deepening and clarifying your own experience, your own understanding. So it's not like you're lording it over them and parceling out some kind of absolute truth. It's more like it's a mutual exploration, and it's been of tremendous benefit to you to have them as a sounding board for that exploration.
Well, it's been a real adventure. I mean, I've always seen it as it's meeting. What is it really? When you strip away all the mystification, it's meeting with friends. It's meeting. With fellow waves in the ocean, and gently pointing back to the fact that, you are already what you seek. It's not I'm a special wave, or I'm the teacher wave, or I'm the enlightened wave, and one day you little waves, you're going to become like that. That's the old stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's gently reminding people of, in a sense, of what they already know, in a way it's not, it's,
well, in the beginning of the interview, I referred to you as a teacher, and you were uncomfortable with that. But I can see why. Maybe a facilitator or something might be a better.
Yeah,
word.
I mean, I've never seen myself as a teacher. I'm comfortable with the label these days. I guess teaching happens. I mean, you could say it that way. Sitting in a room with people, teaching happens, speaking happens, listening happens. But I don't walk around with this identity. I'm a teacher. I don't take that home with me.
Right.
It's like teaching in the context of a meeting. Teaching happens, sharing happens, exploring happens. You could say teaching happens and there's no teacher. But it's the same thing with music or art. You speak to any artist, or at least like an honest artist, and what they'll say is they find art appears. Or music appears, and then it's only afterwards thought says, I I made that. I did. I'm the artist. The artist made the art, or the musician sang the music. Actually, when you really look, I mean, that's why this is, you, with this stuff, and your specialness isn't going to survive. You know, because it's total humility. It's not my humility. It's not like my humility. It's not I'm so humble. It's like total humility in the face of life, really, because it's life. Life is the authority. You know, life is the teacher. Life is the guru. It's not Jeff. Isn't the teacher. You know, Jeff is an appearance within life, and you know the function of the Jeff character in, well, these days anyway, appears to be, you know, sharing, talking, but it's like on a deeper level. What is it? It's it's a mystery, really. This is one of my friends talks about this as the extra miracle. You know, the first miracle is life itself. You know, the first miracle is that anything is happening at all. You know, the first miracle is breathing and sounds and smells and trees and volcanoes, and that's the first. And that would have been enough in a way. That would have been enough. But there's this extra miracle, kind of this additional miracle that wasn't necessary but appears to be the case. Oh, hello. The extra miracle is that, you know, within the first miracle, we can meet like this, or in a meeting or a retreat, we can meet and point back to the first miracle. You know, it's like the extra miracle. It's very, you know, ultimately, even though, you know, you can't put this into words, ultimately, even though you can't talk about it, still there's a real, I mean, that's part of the celebration is that we can meet and we can talk about it, you know, and on a deeper level, knowing that you can't put it into words, you know, but we sing our song anyway, you know, we sing the music and we listen or we don't listen. And so I've never taken this whole teacher thing too seriously, you know. I'm happy to be called a teacher, happy to be called a friend, or happy to be called Jeff or no one or whatever. It's like yeah, can I be all of those things? Yeah, you know. Can I be anything? You know, I can be a friend, I can be a son, I can be a boyfriend, I can be teacher, I can be, you know, I can be interviewee, I can be what, you know. I go to the doctors, I can be patient. You know, I go to the theatre, I'm a whatever, what were they called? It's like I can be all of that, you know.
Audience member,
or whatever. It's
so many hats,
but none of it has to stick. You know, it's like our suffering seems to begin when we fixate on one of those. I want to be that thing, and then we spend the rest of our lives defending that thing, that form, that image. Even the image, as we've been saying, even the image, I have no image. You know, it's like anything can be used.
Oh, true. I mean, the doctor comes home and plays with his kids. He's not a doctor anymore. He's just sitting on the floor, a guy playing with his kids, you know. So
exactly. Like, so Jeff Foster, he does a meeting, you know, and then he leaves and he goes to a cafe, and now is he a teacher? Is he still a teacher? Of course not. You know, he's buying coffee, you know, and he's chatting with the server, you know, and but it's funny, we carry these identities with us, and we don't need to, you know, and then we end up shutting off from, you know, when we end up shutting off from life, and then separating ourselves from others. But
well, it's kind of like what we were talking about towards the beginning, where we tend to kind of, or people in general tend to calcify in terms of a self-image that has to do with the circumstances of their life, you know, their gender, their job, their age, their this, their that. And what you're, I think, pointing to is something which is sort of more fundamental than all those things, which is not encapsulated by any of those things, and which ultimately we rest as. That fly's been buzzing around you the whole interview. that's finally landed on your nose.
My true teacher. And, the Buddha in the form of a fly.
Yeah. So I suppose maybe you can state it better than I, but maybe the takeaway lesson from this whole thing is What would you say if you had to, your bus stop rap? If you had to wrap this up and state it in a nutshell, without.
Rick, you want a soundbite from me?
Yeah, the soundbite.
Soundbite.
You're running for Prime Minister of Great Britain on the non-duality platform, and they want to know what.
Well, you know what? I think what it comes down to in the end is, can this moment be deeply allowed? And if it can't, can that be allowed to? Can that just be allowed? Even if in this moment, sorry, this is a long soundbite.
That's okay. That's okay.
Even if this moment you find you can't allow, you find it impossible to allow, you can't accept, can that be allowed to be there? This acceptance that I talk about, it's like radically all-inclusive. It's like shockingly all-inclusive, really.
See, I allowed you to do a long soundbite.
That's true compassion, Rick. Thank you. You met me where I was. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like if you could. Yeah. What's the essence of this teaching, really? I mean, perhaps what's the essence of all spirituality? Maybe it's like allow.
Yeah.
I can't think of any simpler way of saying it.
That's a good one. I think that's what Byron Katie's trying to say, with her loving what is, and Adyashanti's given lectures on allowing everything to be as it is, and you hear it over and over again. And it's definitely.
But that's not passivity.
No, it's not apathetic or passive.
It's not. No, because that's detachment. That comes from fear. In this allowing, even fear is allowed. You see, so that's the end of detachment in a way. That's when you're really open to life. It's like total openness to life. It's like intimacy again. I think that I think I use that word more than anything these days. Is intimacy. That's my soundbite.
Okay. Great. Get yourself a T-shirt made. Intimacy. I don't know what'll happen if you start wearing that around, but
it might give the wrong.
I don't know if your girlfriend will like it. But started getting approached in cafes. Alrighty. Well, this has been great, Jeff. I'm glad we finally got to do it. I'm glad we got to meet last week, and we'll be meeting again, I'm sure, at conferences like that. It was really a joy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let me just make a couple of concluding remarks. So you've been watching, I think this is maybe interview number 94 or something. I just numbered them so that if people come on the site, they get a sense of how many there are and they know, what to explore. But this is an ongoing series. I do one every week. I believe next week it's going to be Rupert Spira. I'm doing a British double header here. And Rupert is marvelous, as you'll find. There are a number of ways of watching or listening to this show. You can watch it as a video sitting in front of your computer. You can listen to it as a podcast, which is the way I would do it, because I can't sit in front of my computer any more than I do. So there's a podcast you can subscribe to, and you'll get it as an audio. And it's on YouTube. It's also on batgap.com. There's also a little discussion group that springs up around each interview when I post it, so participate in that if you like. And there's a little email newsletter you can sign up for, so that each time I post a new interview you'll get a notification. So that's all there is, folks. So thank you very much for watching or listening. Thank you, Jeff. It's been a joy. And we'll be in touch, and we'll see you all next time.